Hey everybody, this is Brian here. This is going to be our first wrestling related video on the channel in quite a while. So let's get to it. We're going to talk about the top 10 under-remembered wrestlers by WWE. So we're talking mostly about American wrestlers here. I don't want to underrepresent the wrestlers from Mexico or from Japan, Joshi legends or people like Mitsuharu Misawa, Rikido-san. Anyways, so we're mostly talking about American wrestlers here, American male wrestlers, and everybody else deserves their own list, frankly, because there's so many people that you could probably pick who deserve to be remembered more than they are. Anyways, let's get to it. This is going to be the top 10 on the most forgotten and neglected legacies of wrestlers from WWE that died too soon. So let's talk about employees who passed early but weren't really dignified beyond the level of a 1960 something to 2000 whatever placard or something at the beginning of the show, Considering the role that chronic traumatic encephalopathy from concussions often plays in these guys passing so early, along with the pain medications that often are given without a prescription, alcoholism, and of course steroids. WWE shouldn't make their main concern to distance themselves from lawsuits and liabilities from class action suits. You know what I'm trying to say, by not being responsible for the things that are really their fault. These guys being in so much pain represents some sort of dangers or underregulation. They need to be more careful if people are dying at 45 and dying three times earlier. Sorry, they're dying three times more often. They have like a higher mortality rate than the average person their age. WWE's been negligent, in my opinion. A lot of young men and women who blessed us with hours and hours of entertainment are forgotten because Vince and his family, frankly, only care about money. We can no longer pretend that their constant touring, in-ring violence, and looking the other way in terms of drugs backstage and steroids that everyone takes. Notice that a lot of people who are middle-aged and die in wrestling, they die when they're getting ready for a comeback. It's because of the steroids. It's because of the amphetamines. These suspensions and the occasional sacrificial lamb type release, from the contract, they don't change the fact that WWE is a part of these deaths. These young and early deaths. And that needs to change. The importance that wrestling played to me is incalculable. I used to watch SmackDown every Friday at the shelter when I was, when my family was going through hard times. Now it's still a part of my life for me 12 years later. DVDs, I collect wrestling figures, I play the video game every day. I cannot thank these guys enough for everything that they've, given me. It's kind of like that Tupac line where he says, "But my plan is to show you that I understand," when he's talking to his mother. It's like I can only show these guys that I understand. I can never give back to them for all that they've given to me. Let me check my camera time. Okay, we're fine. Um, I only wish that WWE recognized the martyrdom that generosity came at. I remember my first match was Rey Mysterio versus Orton on SmackDown in 2006, but I remember all the guys since then who aren't with us anymore. And I think that they should have gotten tribute shows or special DVDs. Only, the highest like booked, like, main event level guys got those things. But what about guys who wrestled on the indies? What about guys who wrestled in ECW and WCW? WWE owns the copyright to those things, so it's not like you or me can just go out and produce a WWE library, in terms of their videotapes and matches. Like, they have all of those resources that they have exclusive access to. And, a lot of these guys who wrestled lower on the card, maybe in other countries. Anyways, we'll talk specifically about their legacies and their accolades, real names. We'll talk about career highlights. And finally, the memory that WWE left these guys with. I love these guys, and this list hurts me to make, but I felt that they deserved it, and they deserve more care and remembering. And I'm sorry if I tear up. Anyways, here we go. Number one on here is Test, real name Andrew Martin. He wrestled from 1997 through 2009 before his accidental oxycodone overdose while working for WWE CW. He was around in the Attitude Era, and he was even in several intergender tag teams, including TNA with Trish Stratus, not the most creative name, but it was a creative idea, I think, intergender tag teams then in WWF. So it's an interesting thing, though it might have been more where it tree branched off to than the actual tag team itself. I remember Test most though for his elbow drop off the pod in the Elimination Chamber match with the ECW originals. Um, I think Test suffered from underbooking and being used to job to guys like Batista in matches that his towering height and athleticism could have been of greater use in. Sadly, his long career and all this underuse didn't pan out. He ended up with CTE from multiple concussions and head traumas, the same disease that led to the Benoit tragedy. Anyways, somehow this employee of so many years, more than 10 years in WWE, um, being all the way from WWF through WWECW, it didn't necessitate more to them than a little rip placard at the beginning of the B show. I know Test wasn't Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock, but couldn't he at least get a special T-shirt or a moment of silence to begin the show? Anyways, thanks for it all, Test. We love you. Number two on this list is going to be ECW legend Mike Awesome, real name Michael Lee Alfonso. He's mostly known for his work in ECW in Japan. He also wrestled in WCW and WWF /E, but neither fully made use of his incredible ability to dive over the top rope and across the ring off of the top turnbuckle. Instead, they stuck him with embarrassing ring names and they underpaid him. They gave him names like Fat Chick Thriller, Mike Awesome, and that 70s guy, Mike Awesome. How awful. WCW deserved the tank just for that. Um, he was a member of the original One Night Stand where he faced Masato Tanaka in a match that the crowd started out booing him in, and then they ended it applauding him and chanting, "This match rules." Frankly, I think that's pretty cool. Even Joey Styles, who was ranting at him about how he left, he called him a Judas and stuff. He was giving him his dues at the end. And so was the ability of Mike Awesome in the ring. He was like a 300-pound cruiserweight. Talk about an underrated wrestler over the course of his career. He was only given an in memory of placard at the beginning of ECW on Sci-Fi and a mundane article on WWE's website neglecting the cause of death being suicide, unfortunately. Um, I wish that considering he could wrestle like The Undertaker and then some, he would have been the Hall of Fame member that his in-ring skills justified. If it wasn't for backstage politics and underutilization, personal life problems, um, I think that, you know, there's so much more that Mike Awesome could have gone on to do. Anyways, thank you for all the classics, Mike. Wish it had worked out better. Number 3 on this list, let's check. Is going to be Reed Flair, the son of legendary um, NWA and WWE member, well, pretty much everywhere, Ric Flair. Um, he passed on due to a multiple toxicity of heroin and several other substances. Unlike the placards given to the last two records unlike the placards given in the last two wrestlers' memories, Flair was actually referenced in an on-screen feud disrespectfully and directly. His sister Charlotte was feuding with Paige in 2015 and said that he didn't have much fight in him since he died of an overdose. That's pretty disgraceful. This was the worst tactic of the year in the opinion of Dave Meltzer and the WON, the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Arguably wrestling's most prestigious fan written piece. Um, to make things worse, they never got the permission to reference him on screen from his family. It's a sad end to the life of a man with a lot of potential that struggled with hard substances. Anyways, let's go on to number 4, which is Chris Candido. Real name Chris Candido, just with a T instead of a D. He was in ECW, TNA, and WWF, along with many different indie companies during his career from 1986 to his passing due to pneumonia in 2005. In WWF, he was valeted by Sonny as the oddly named Body Donnas tag team. He was also a multiple time tag team champion across multiple companies like WWF, ECW, and multiple NWA territories. I couldn't find any evidence of WWE slash doing anything to honor him. TNA actually set up a memorial tag tournament in his honor. Considering he isn't tied to any controversial topics like steroids or CTE or even drug substances, I couldn't find why couldn't they do a little more to remember him. They only care about their own image, and it doesn't make them look bad. Rest in peace to a long underrated wrestler. Number 5 on here is going to be someone who actually passed when I was a kid watching Raw. And I remember this mention of him. I actually remember seeing it on TV, not just reading about it. Real name for Lance Cade was Lance Curtis McNaught. He worked for WWE in the tag team with Trevor Murdoch that had that redneck theme to it. And it makes me sad to think he was released after overdosing and having a seizure on a plane and needing medical care. I think JR was pretty hard on him since he struggled with drug problems throughout his life, including going to rehab several years earlier. JR had simply qualified it as a major league mistake using bad judgment, end quote. I think that's really cold. And in my opinion, it just provides WWE with a self-justifying excuse to forget him and distance themselves from any problems he had with steroids or with whatever he died from backstage. They didn't really release it. Anyways, it just is like a self-justifying excuse to make themselves look better and distance themselves from that wrestling related wave of deaths that happened in the mid 2000s, when there was that steroid controversy was happening in baseball and wrestling. Anyways, this is an example of harshness for a selfish reason. He was he at least deserved a memorial on Raw and the show. He was on it for a number of years. He won 3 tag team championships. It seems like he could have gone on to more. He was only 29. What a shame. He had a great drop kick. Makes me extra sad as a person with epilepsy to think that they were so cold towards him and they released him from his contract after that incident. He couldn't he have deserved a second shot at rehab. I guess there's that mentality that makes people think that you should be 100% responsible for everything you do, and you shouldn't offer any empathy or heart and aid towards people who are down on their luck because it was their fault. That's hard to accept, such coldness. Rest in peace to 3-time WWE Tag Team Champion Lance Cade. Let's get to number 6 on here. Louis Spicolli, real name Louis Bucciolo Jr. He worked with WWF, WCW, and ECW, even though he was only 27 when he died. He still managed to work for the big 3 before wrestling pretty much got monopolized in the early 2000s. He had a bad addiction to soma and alcohol. It led to multiple releases from different companies, and he unfortunately relapsed into it and OD'd when his mom got cancer in the late 90s. I think that considering he gave 10 plus years of his life to wrestling, I don't think he should be forgotten just because of his association with drugs or anything. Why does anyone think he was on those painkillers in the first place? Wrestling obviously hurts, and that's why they all have all of these concussion-related controversies and lawsuits everywhere. I have never heard his name on WWE programming once. Should it really matter where you were booked in the card during your career? He was a lower mid carder. He had the ring name like Radford. He was on the B show. Should that mean he was wiped from history and whitewashed out? I don't think so. Let me check where we are. I'm going to make a part 2 on this video. Thank you for watching, and we'll get to the next entry then. I love you all because you're you. Let's get to the next part of this video soon. Thank you.